So, we're up here with a really distinguished crew here, and with this group, I'm kind of like the B player, moderator. Ken Russell, does everyone know Ken? Ken's relatively new in town, I think, relatively new, out of Atlanta and Charlotte, and Ken and I have been traveling the world together. Now he is in Houston because he loves it so much down here. Ken might be the best facilitator that I've ever seen in the world at an HMG event. Ken, you want to say hello and a little introduction? We'll all do introductions.
Sure. Hello, folks. Glad to be here. In fact, some of you may, if you're old enough, may remember when I was here back in the early part of the century. I love saying that. It sounds so weird. But I used to, back in the post-Enron days, I worked for Duke Energy, and I was here as the interim CIO for the Merchant Trading Group. So I spent maybe a good 2 years here. So if I haven't seen you yet and I met you in those days, hello. But I'm happy to be here. I love working with Hunter because we talk about the things that matter. And what's funny is you'll see me kind of refer to these notes that I've made this morning. I do this little technique. I'm sure you may do something similar, this idea of a mind map, where words that come out, like Tom was talking about nurture, I circle that word, and you'll hear it come out today with stuff that we're talking about with Jesse. So take the time to just kind of, if you hear a word today that's interesting and kind of like tweaks your brain a little bit, write it down, circle it, and then use it again the next few days. And then next thing you know, you'll be using it all the time. So I'm going to say a word. I'll say, it'll be inculcated into what you do. Oh, wow, there's a word. But anyway, thank you. Nice to meet you.
Well, and I never asked you, doctor of what? What was your study?
Organization change. So I'm a technology guy that got somehow connected with organization change when I was in university. So that's what I do.
Well, does anyone have a problem with change in their organization? Come on, show of hands. Everyone, hands up. Come on, be honest. Tom, everyone, right?
Yeah.
No problem. Okay, all right. Outsource that one. Oh, great. Good to see you. And your company?
Curran Biotech. By the way, Curran Biotech, material sciences company based out of Houston. In fact, it's a spin out of University of Houston. If you get a chance to look us up, because it's pretty amazing technology that does coatings for filters that stops the virus. So it's kind of cool. So
and does the line of business and the C-suite get the importance of technology?
They do. In fact, the difference in this time, I've been a CIO multiple times. I guess we call it serial CIO, right? But this time, the I stands for innovation. So I'm a chief innovation officer. And what's different about that is that I'm helping the C-suite guys figure out how to actually commercialize their product, because they're inventors. They make the products. They don't know how to actually commercialize the product. So that's what I'm helping them do.
And as Tom shared earlier, what would you say your brand is, and what's your why? As Stephen Covey said, what's your why or passion in this industry? Your brand and your why.
Yeah, my brand is basically making connections. You'll hear me say this lots and lots. It's all about connections. But that next C that comes along after that, it's conversations. I help people have conversations, not monologues. I'm not encouraging folks to tell people what they're doing. I'm encouraging folks to have bidirectional conversation.
Great. Thanks, Ken. Awesome.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Thanks. Alan, you're up next. You want to stand up? It's kind of like...
I think I'll just sit.
You'll sit? You got it. That's fine. There are no rules here. Open mic. So a little self-introduction. What's your brand? What's your why? What's the great work you're doing now at Toshiba?
Yeah, so Alan Wisher, Vice President CIO of Toshiba International Corporation. Most people know Toshiba. We sell a lot of things. In Houston, we have a 1 million square foot manufacturing facility where we manufacture mostly discrete drives and motors. A lot of them go into the oil and gas pasture, which is rewarding because we know that the world kind of runs still on oil. And so we really are proud of what Toshiba creates to run the global economy, basically. And so happy to be here, happy to contribute.
What do you actually do? I know it's a huge company. There's so many layers. How would you describe it? There must be like 5 divisions.
Yeah, we have multiple divisions. In terms of what's unique about here in the United States is we do have our independent engineering. So we have research and development. So we actually create and build products. So we have engineers, and obviously we support that from an IT function. We have massive US-based sales teams and really good relationships with some key distributors. A lot of people here with the companies that are represented are actually our customers, so thank you. And then finally we have the manufacturing plant. So we have hundreds of people that have worked through the pandemic to keep us operating, keep our products going out. It's been not an easy event, but we have kept up. We were only out for 1 week, right? So I'm very proud of Toshiba and what we've accomplished here.
Great stuff. And your brand and your why?
Our brand is Toshiba. We're about innovation, right? And I like that word of inspire. I think inspire is going to be my why. So
Great.
That was good stuff.
Great stuff.
Appreciate it.
Excellent. Jesse, you're up next.
Jesse Carrillo, SVP and Chief Information Officer with Hines. Hines is a commercial real estate firm, investment, property management, development, 27 countries, over 200 cities. I've been with the firm. I'm not a serial CIO, so I've been with the firm 27 years. Grew up within the firm. I'm a coder, geek at heart, and so I've just been fortunate to be at the right place, at the right family for 27 years. I would say my brand, if anybody knows me, it's a little unusual, a little different. I'm a heavy metal geek, and so I like to have fun and be professional, but also smile and laugh and just live life. And so that's my brand. Just always be positive. Always look at the positives, even in a crazy pandemic where we all lost family members and friends. But just always try to find that one positive. So my brand is positive, and then collaborator. I just love to meet people. I love to chat with people. I love to get people together to make amazing things happen. So I've got a chance to meet and work with Ken, at Current with what he's doing and how it relates to commercial real estate. I've known Alan forever. We're probably going to pick on each other while we're up here. So it's just that kind of vibe is what I give as my brand.
In fact, if they sell they sell your wig on Amazon, if there's something, I'm going to buy it.
That's what I'm going for. I'm going for that wig.
Great stuff, Jesse. And I know you like giving back. You're involved with and being engaged with SIM. Mm-hmm. You also like working with athletic kids. Baseball, is it?
Well, just in general, the youth. And so again, and this is a little bit of my background. I grew up with a single mom, and so I had to be the dad in the family. So as I grow up and I've had the opportunity to engage with organizations, I really gravitate towards those that are, youth related, especially in the STEM fields. And so I'm a board member with a great organization here called Genesis Works that takes high school students and really gives them opportunities. I've done mentoring at the middle school level. Working with SIM, we have a great outreach program that we try to get back to the community. So people always ask me, like, when do you actually sleep? And I say, sleep is overrated. I love doing my job, and I love helping the community. So that's also part of my brand.
Great. Well, everyone had to pivot during the global economic crisis. Jesse, what did you guys do differently to get through it psychologically? And what's the vision for the firm? I mean, you guys are a global commercial real estate company, right?
Yep.
Some couple $100 billion under management, roughly?
Just a few.
Give or take a few? Bananas? What are you doing differently?
Well, I mean, again, it was a crazy time for us in commercial real estate and all our, peers in commercial real estate when everybody went to work from home. It's like, okay, well, is that the end of the office? And I think early on, you saw a lot of articles around, is this the end of real estate? Do people really need real estate? And so the first 3 months, besides getting the firm, to a work from home situation, which I think it was said earlier, we'd had put things in place. We were very cloud first. So folks were using browsers for the most part to do their jobs. And so it really wasn't a big, lift and shift to get folks from the office to work from home from a Hines internal perspective. Of course, we joked early on, it's like, we knew a pandemic was coming, that's why we did all this, but in reality, all our respective firms were kind of moving in that direction anyway. But for us, it was more around, is this the end of our industry? And so there was a lot of tough months early in. I think once everybody got comfortable and realized that we still had to run our buildings, our property management engineering teams still had to be on site. We still had some critical tenants that needed to be on site, so we had to be there to support them. So we realized it wasn't the end. It was just going to have to change how people use real estate, and we started to see that recently. I mean, we're developing a lot more buildings with more flexible space. We're definitely going to not see the leases of 20, 25-year leases anymore. Companies are going to want smaller, short-term leases. And so I think as an industry, in Hines, we're really starting to adapt, what the new office is going to look like. And it is going to be, it's interesting, we're in an amazing hotel today, but it is going to be more like a hotel. It's going to be more like a multifamily, more like a apartment building. You're going to come into the office, and it's going to be, we're going to try to bring the vibe and the fun and, amenities, coffee bars, yoga studios. I mean, you have to. Otherwise, why are people going to want to drive long distances or commute long distances to get to an office where they're just going to sit at a desk when they've proven that they can work from home? So it's our challenge now as to how to re-energize and excite the office space. And I think we're doing a pretty good job so far, and we have more to go, but we're excited, and again, we'll talk a little bit about some of the innovation that we've been working on.
Excellent stuff. Thanks, Jesse. You know, Ken, back over to you. When you think about kind of what you're excited about with regarding new technologies and partnerships, it also really comes down to people and keeping your team engaged and your partners engaged and the C-suite engaged. You're an amazing communicator. You're an OCM expert. What have you learned through the pandemic?
Well, you know, the pandemic kind of changed everything. It was definitely a reset. But one of the words that I'm going to toss out at you guys now is it caused us to learn how to amplify all that we do. What's interesting is that whether you're talking to the board or whether you're talking to a potential partner, you want to get them engaged. You want to find ways to amplify all that you do, because you don't have the luxury of just doing things the way you used to do them. Particularly with another A word is accelerate. You know, if you're trying to accelerate what you're trying to do, it's very important to make sure that you are connecting and communicating in ways, having these conversations in ways that you never had before. A good example would be this idea between vendors and partners that we talk about. Do you want a vendor or do you want a partner? And I think you and Tom were talking this morning about that very thing. And what you want to make sure you do is make sure that you don't treat partners like vendors. Like, I want 14 of those things, I want 27 of those things, and just give me your best price. When I was at Duke all those years ago, I mean, I learned a hard lesson just watching people beat the crap out of people for price. And then when something really went wrong, like we didn't have a pandemic in those days, but we did have a hurricane. When something went wrong, those guys weren't around because you treated them like crap. So one thing I learned about the pandemic is that, those relationships that you nurtured, to Tom's point, if you took that time before the pandemic to nurture, then guess who was there waiting with you and working with you and accelerating with you and amplifying with you? Those were the partners. That's what I learned about the pandemic.
And what did you learn about yourself in the pandemic?
I learned that I didn't have to be someplace. What was interesting, I could work remotely. I never thought I could do that. I always thought I had to be someplace, Hunter. It was awakening for me.
Okay, I want to take that one step further, because you're like our resident expert on communication, both external and internal. How many people really went on a journey? They said, okay, I'm going to learn something new or do something different during this time. I don't know if it's going to be 1 month or 18 months. And what do you learn about yourself in terms of how you communicate with yourself, right? A day, a week, a year. It pushed you to a different dimension. You probably grew from it, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think we all have these kind of moments where you're staring at the screen, right? But then you look to the left, you look to the right, okay? And you see, oh, there's a lake out there. Or there's my wife. There's whoever it is or whatever it is that's different. You realize that there's more to your life than what's in front of the screen. And I think that's the most amazing thing, is taking that moment to realize, there is an awakening going on here, that I'm better than just the person that I reflect on stage. I do more than what than I appear. I am somebody that maybe I've forgotten who I was, 20 years ago. And as I told you before, my wife and I took on these projects during the pandemic, and we're building a garden wall in our backyard. I'm not a mason, but you know what? I'm enjoying that experience with my wife. You're taking that time to renew who I am.
Great stuff. Love the story. Thanks for sharing that. Alan, when you think about great partnerships, give us an example of when one went right and then when one went wrong, and why.
Yeah, I think the ones that have gone best that we've had is where, and I think this was mentioned, Ken, that we care about one another, right? And what I would recommend, in terms of a partnership is caring about those that are taking care of your company, whether they're an employee or not an employee, and actually looking to them through their career, get to know them in their career, right? Because one thing that I come to the public accounting space, and what I find interesting is I've made more partners at firms in my current role as a CIO than I did when I worked in the public accounting space. And so it's important that you get to know your partners. And then, so where we've been very successful is where we had, big ERP implementations. We've had partners come in. We align, right? So it's you align at the top. You build that organizational chart that basically says, this is our organization, this is your organization, and then you start to see it just starts to merge together. And they're just simple little things you need to do. Give them an internal number, give them an internal email, so they look like part of your organization. So that's where we've been very successful. And where we haven't is where we haven't done those things, and I think you mentioned, and that's growth, because I have people on my team that still need to grow in terms of how they're going to treat a partner, so I try to lead from example. But sometimes, in the IT group in particular, we grow up very commoditized, right? It's about buying a product, it's about this, and to really expand out of that takes a little bit of growth in your career to understand that. So that's where it's gone right and wrong.
So when you think of Toshiba and the innovation edge, what's the genesis of that? It goes right back to the founding part of the firm, right?
Yeah,
Company? It's
the rice cooker. It's what we created first, right? And so it's Toshiba. That's what made Toshiba, really. It's a group that can think out of the box, quite frankly, And what I did mention before, it's like bringing different industries and coming to events like this is critical, because it's amazing. Because we're mostly manufacturing, but I'll sit next to people in banking, or I'll sit next to people in automotive, and the ideas that come to bear because of that cross-pollination that happens. I start thinking about technology and innovation in ways that I didn't know were applicable to my business, right? So it's things like this that keep it going, because if you're just concentrating in your silo and in your company, you're not broadening and expanding the ideas that come to the table, right? So that's how we improve innovation.
That's really well said, and it's kind of where I want to take the whole company, the industry, is to this think tank of innovation and how to model, to give you the platform, the resources, and connections to help engage your thinking around innovation and changing the world, changing your company, changing perceptions, changing your brand, accelerating your brand, accelerating your innovative thinking, your creativity. How many people really wish they had more creativity in their company, on their teams, or themselves? I'll say myself, creativity is a huge premium, right? So, how do you address that, Alan? Where do you go for creative inspiration, and how do you get fueled? And is there a formula? Are there any tricks, any secrets?
Yeah.
Or maybe not?
Yeah. And first of all, I want to commend Jesse, because we've been friends for a while, and when this whole pandemic hit, I thought of you most. I'm like, okay, well, how is Jesse going to innovate out of this one, right? And you did a great job. And our situation is a bit unique. I work very closely with our chief technology executive, and so he is the idea guy, right? And he and I, we sat together, we talked about, the edge computing device that his team was creating, and then I said, we have to take a trip to Japan. And so he and I actually went to Japan together, and it was just fascinating, the idea sharing between us and the folks in Japan who were creating very similar products, but we didn't even know about it, And so sitting together with partners, and I think it's easier than ever now, really, because the Japanese culture is not the most virtual environment, and the pandemic hit Japan pretty hard, right? But now they're starting to say, oh, wow, we can meet with different cultures over this video, and we can share things that they never thought to share before, right? And so that collaboration, I mean, the amount of innovation in terms of sharing it's exponentially grown. People just have to take advantage of these technologies that have been enabled, right? And they were there, they just really weren't used, and now they're getting really polished.
So the cultural differences are so different, right, between the U.S. and Japan. That must be an interesting challenge or thing to work with every day.
It is. I have to bow a lot, so my back, I do back strengthening, it's rewarding.
But it works. It can work, right?
Oh, it works great.
Success stories over the decades are amazing.
Without a doubt, right? So, I mean, Japan has brought so much to this country in terms of manufacturing, regimen, black belt. The two have meshed, and that's for any. We've had these conversations about diversity, inclusion. I mean, there's no doubt that, and I don't want to get on my soapbox here, but the thing is, the United States has so much to offer. And people get down on our country, and I'm like, you have to go other places to understand how great this country is, because there's no other country that I've been to that has so much diversity, that you can get so much diversity in thinking. I have a diverse IT group. I couldn't get that somewhere else. I mean, and I love that about this country.
So then one more time on this, Alan, why does diversity on a team count? Why does it matter?
Yeah, it matters in a big way, because if you have an independent culture that's thinking in an independent way, whatever they're building, thinking, selling, the services that they provide, the relationship they have with themselves, their government, is very unique, and they don't think out of the box sometimes, right? And so what we have in this country is, if I want to do something in Japan or Asia or Europe, I have people on my team from those countries and those geographies, and they can sit there and tell me, you know what, Alan? That's a great deal for here. This works. This makes sense from a cybersecurity perspective or what have you, but it's not going to work in that country, right? And they can tell me that like that because they know they have parents from that country, they have relationships in that country, and they know that. The other thing I can tell you is offshoring is enormously easier when you have folks that are from the country that you're offshoring from, right? They speak the language, they understand the land, they have these conversations. It makes it more personable, and you have a better partnership and relationship that way. That can only be done really in the United States, in my opinion.
So you have a lot of global experience. That sounds fantastic on your CV.
I want more.
How many people want more global experience? It's important, right? Tom, it's important? Huge, right? Jesse, over to you. Let's just go to a little different direction. Creativity. I know you love music and you love playing the guitar. What'd you do to focus on your health and wellness through the pandemic, and what'd you learn about your brand, yourself, and your why?
Yeah, so before I go on, I mean, I think you're talking about global, like the Bahamas, Costa Rica. That's the global we're talking
That's where we
about.
need to expand.
Exactly.
You're absolutely right.
No, I think for me, it's again, just, I actually worked remote for about 3 years at Hines for about 3 years. And so I knew how to work remote. I knew how to work with my employees remote. And so again, when we went to this remote, I was able to guide my employees really well and try to use what I had used when I was remote, exercise regular, listen to music. I listen to music when I work. Sometimes my team members, I try to put headphones, but sometimes I'll crank it up, when it's a good song, and I make them listen to it just so that they can get out of their comfort zone and get away from their screens, right? And so being able to leverage the things I love, when I was working from home and bringing that to the office and then bringing it back in this pandemic, it wasn't that bad for me personally because I had already kind of lived some of those lives. I think for me, what I learned is I probably, having been at Hines for over 25 years or whatever when this thing started, I think I'd taken my team for granted a little too much, right? I wasn't reaching out as much with them. I would see them in the office. We would have parties. We would have engagements. We were like a family. And when we went into this lockdown, I realized that I probably should have been doing more. It's like any relationship you have. After a while, you get comfortable. You kind of know each other, and you just don't make that extra effort. And I think what I learned about myself is I probably should have been doing more effort and not taking my team for granted. And so I made sure I did that on the way in. And that's what made me more whole and it made me more happy when I felt like I was actually re-engaging. And even though I know my team, I know their families, I know their kids and all that, you can never connect enough with your team members. And I think I just realized that I wasn't maybe doing enough while we were back in the office. And so to me, that was one of the big lessons. From a creativity standpoint, I'm like I said, musician, I do art. I'm probably one of those IT people that when people first meet, it's like, you work in IT, really? Because, I try not to act, very firm like traditional old IT. I do music, I do art. I try to be very creative with my hands and my brain. And so to me, I didn't have a challenge, me personally, but I tried to leverage my personality, what I did with my team members that were struggling. I think, one of the things that a lot of us really didn't think about before COVID was mental health. Even though we knew it was happening, we knew our team members were burning out. We knew we were talking about work-life balance, which we realized was never really any balance. I think we just didn't focus enough. And I think when we went into this, we realized we should have been doing more. And so I leveraged my positivity, my creativity, my way of approaching life with some of those team members I knew were struggling. And so I want to give a shout out to Alan and other folks like Alan, because I know he did the same thing, and I know a lot of you did the same thing with your team members, is really, empathized and got more human. I think we as IT leaders, sometimes we deal so much with technology and business and processes, and I think it was said earlier about the people. I mean, it is about the people. It is about your team members, and I think we all got more human, and I think that's one of the positives that I took out of it, is that we all got more human.
The empathetic leadership, right?
Yes.
And then this notion, I'm glad you brought it up because I don't know many technology conferences that will go to this place. I love the wellness, the health, and the holistic idea. In fact, my venture group out of Silicon Valley, we just invested in essentially a mental health company for corporations. Basically a portal of resources regarding wellness and mental health. That's not a commercial, but I wouldn't have thought of that 2 years ago, 3 years ago. How many people are concerned with their teams, overall their organization's well-being and mental well-being?
Of course.
In general. I mean, it's a big topic, right? Huge. And then actually gauging where the person is coming from at that point in time, that moment, is what is really going on. Are they really putting contextually the facts on the table, or is something else activating or playing out that is accentuating what they're trying to communicate? I mean, so much of it is deciphering what's real and what's not. Ken?
Yeah, I think about this quite often, this idea that, especially in our role, right, the CIO position, and you're looking at two, what I call next generation CIOs right here. I mean, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, you wouldn't hear the words that are coming out of their mouths, this idea of being empathetic and helpful and, about my team and that sort of stuff. What's really, I call it the power of the pivot, because the ability to pivot quickly and to do different things and use your experience. And here's the 2 words, guiding experience. The ability to guide your team, the ability to guide an organization with your experience is pretty powerful. And I'll give you a quick example of that. We had a situation where, the pandemic kind of changed everything for everybody, but we had a really great infrastructure guy, and he was tops. He was the best infrastructure guy you can imagine, but he didn't know anything about enterprise architecture. And as you all know, you need to understand a bit more. You need to have your head above the fray, so you can actually see more than just infrastructure. And I had the pleasure, and I say the word pleasure because I had a chance to coach him for 6 months to have him become our chief architect. And just watching that, the idea, the eyes start to shine, and this idea of this creativity start to spark, and the ability to pivot quickly was just amazing. And I think that's what's really nice about having these kind of style of leaders emerge, is that people start to think about, well, what else can I do if I just lift my head above the fray?
Well, thank you, Ken. Think about the competitive advantage. I love studying some of the best thinkers in the world. And whether you like them or not, you'd have to agree, Elon Musk is probably one of our modern day geniuses, right? Mm-hmm. And did everyone get our newsletter? I printed it Monday. I cited the annual meeting was last Thursday down at the Gigafactory in Austin. And Elon went on for about 30 to 40 minutes in the most succinct, clear way I've ever seen him present about where they are right now at Tesla and where the world's going. And back to Alan's point, I probably went through 4 Japanese cars, and I just bought my first American car. You guys know what I got, right? So, but the point was, it's not about that. The point is that what Elon said, and this was really fascinating, because this is one of the smartest geniuses that we have living in the world, right? And he's accessible on the internet, right? And he said, you know what, our biggest problem here at Tesla now is finding qualified engineers. So if he's saying that, and you need engineering thinking to innovate and to have an edge and to win, if he's struggling with that, probably one of the richest guys in the world, one of the most compelling business models in the world, how do we go about it in our world, right? How do we work on that problem back to maybe the mental health piece, but inspiring people, engaging your team to then recruit and retain the best you can get your hands on at the level you're operating at, whether it be a global company, a regional company, another global company. Who wants to jump in? Anyone want to take that? That's a big challenge. Mm-hmm. It's a high bar. Jesse?
Yeah, no, I think for me it's about, again, realizing that our teams are individuals. And I think what happens is, even going back to an engineer, you try to hire a prototypical engineer, one that knows the math, knows engineering, but you also need that collaborative, you also need that communication skills, you also need those other softer intangibles in today's world, right? And so I think for us, it's how do you make sure that you're looking for the full employee, not like we used to do in the old days when you were just looking for a resume that only had these 5 skills and 6 years of experience and whatever, and really looking for the full package, in today's world. And I think it's also treating the individual. So I'll use this remote, work office thing. We've lost some employees because we're commercial real estate and we're thinking about we really need our employees in the office. right? And so we've got a little dichotomy going on between IT and the rest of the commercial real estate or Hines of what's the policy we put in place. Because what works for accounting or business leaders versus IT is different. And so having that flexibility and be able to treat those employees or potentially new employees as individuals to meet them where it works best for them, right? Be able to talk to them about, well, what is in the best interest for you as well as for me, but really kind of putting yourselves in their shoes. It's like, what will help you be better, right? We always do surveys for engagement. You know, we all do engagement surveys. You know, our HR teams do engagement surveys to make sure our employees are engaged, you know, and so that we get more productivity. But having a policy that you know, and especially in our departments, that says, well, everybody has to do this, you won't get engaged employees. You have to do old school management and leadership is go to those employees, individualize them, and say, I know this will work better for you. I know this will work. I'm looking out for you to make sure you're the best performance for you and the firm, so you're more engaged, and we think this works best for you. Maybe it's a little bit more flexibility, maybe it's less flexibility. And I think it takes so much effort. And I think sometimes as leaders, you know, we want the easy answer. We just want to do something quick and just roll this out. So I would say, you know, I love the idea that we individualize. I love the idea that you throw creativity, art, soft skills into your hiring process and your discussions, and not just, you know, the old school technical. You know,
Jesse, you nailed it. Great input and response. Alan, you want to jump in on that one?
Yeah. So first I want to start with, you know, these are good problems to have. We're in a space that we can go get another job. They have other spaces that are much more difficult, right? And so one of the things that Elon's doing in terms of, you know, attracting new talent is a stress on me because I've got to retain talent, right? And but you know, in terms of it, there's growth everywhere, you know, and so that's just great. I think these are good problems to have, and so I've got that positive spin on it, and I'll say, you know, an important piece is for people to understand the mission of the company. I mean, if you look at people coming out of college, when I came out of college, it was a lot different. I just wanted a job, you know, and people coming out of college, they want to give back to society. And this is the right way. We've come a long way. This is what people should do when they get out of college. They want to contribute to something to make the earth better, right? And so we're in this place that is a much better place than when I personally started. So I think it's important if, you know, in terms of, yes, Elon Musk is going to want my people, but it's important that the people that are with Toshiba understand what Toshiba does and what it contributes to society, you know, because every company has that, and you have to understand and be on board for what your company is doing, right? And I think that's a big contributor to employee retention. So people have to understand the value behind the brand, the value behind the company, because part of my job is retaining great people at Toshiba. And having Elon, you know, find his folks somewhere else, right? The other thing I can tell you is, you know, because we've got this, and this is gonna be a slow go, particularly in manufacturing, right? So it's a different mindset, but we talk about it a lot, but I think it's more difficult than it is to say, right? And that is, we're talking about more diversity on teams by getting talent in different geographies. And, you know, in IT, we've done that for a while because of outsourcing. Other departments haven't. So if you look holistically at a business, what's really easy for us to speak is a little bit more difficult for others, but they have a lot to learn from us, you know? And we are in a new world now that's a lot smaller because the technology is better, and we can bring a lot of people together in a way that we never have thought of as much, but now we can do it better than ever. And so we can get more diversity, but it's going to take time. It's not like that. It's going to take a while before we can get that, but that's going to happen because that's the only way we're going to get more talent into the United States, quite frankly.
I love it. Yeah. This has been a great panel, right? I kind of just punch down on one other item here. Let's get technical. Back to that video, the annual report. He's talking about AI. He's talking about autonomous driving. He's talking about data. And I would be scared to death if I was a Detroit automaker, knowing where Tesla's now and how they're ramping. What do you think about AI, Ken?
It's funny you mentioned that because I was just in a meeting last week about, you know, we're talking about hiring new team members and that sort of stuff. So I kind of tossed up the idea that, well, maybe Alexa could be our next hire, or Siri. And they were saying, well, why is that? I said, well, think about what we do in these meetings, whether it's a board meeting or a staff meeting, whatever else. It's about what did we do last quarter? What was that number? What was that? Who was that customer? We tend as humans to forget those things because they're topical and they kind of go by us. But if I could just say in the air, hey Siri, Sorry for your phones here. Hey, Siri. There she goes. I hate when it does that, but she's doing it again. You would say, hey, whatever. And then, what was the third quarter results for, IBM or whatever, blah, blah, blah. I think that's what's going to be a game changer, Hunter, is integrating AI in our everyday lives. We're already doing it with our parents and our grandparents, right? I mean, how many of you guys bought one of those devices last Christmas and just so you can connect, right? You did. I mean, and those are great. That's using AI in a real life situation. But bringing that to the boardroom, bringing that to the staff meeting, I think that's going to be exciting.
Do we have a microphone, guys, in the back of the room for questions? Oh, great. Tom, you want to jump in a question at all about modern technologies? Think what's on your mind? Is AI on your mind at all?
We just had a meeting yesterday with a company that does customer care centers as a service, think call center and things like that, and virtual agents, and the industry is going towards 40-50% of customer interactions being driven by AI and virtual agents. And one of the things that I struggle with, and I'd love your guys' opinion, is when you talk about this stuff, a lot of our employees view that as a threat. You put me out of work, right? And we tend to talk about, no, you can now focus on the customer relationship. You can now focus on growing the accounts. You can now focus on fill in the blank, right? So I would just love any thoughts for us on how you balance the touting and promoting of the new technologies, the AI, but at the same time making people feel comfortable and not threatened by it. Change management.
Who wants to take it? Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, I think, on that front, Tom, we actually talked about this last night. The representative examples that we have of this fear that because it's gone on in technology for honestly decades, and the latest bout of that was clouds coming and what the infrastructure group felt about that technology and that they were going to lose their jobs. And so we have a representative example over and over again, if you think back, of just instances like this where technology, and it was in banking at first, we weren't going to have, banks were, these branches were going to go out of business, and now I see more than I've ever seen because of the automated teller machine, right? And so I think history shows us that that's just not going to happen, right? And then it's just giving people representative examples of what they're going to be doing next. So if you take my infrastructure group, for instance, it's like, okay, well, this is cloud, and this is the nurturing that the cloud environment's going to need, and it's going to take a different skill set, but we're going to teach you that, and we're going to take you on this mission. The other thing that I was thinking about last night is on the AI front. So my kids use Alexa, right? And Alexa will give them some information, and then they go, "Thanks, Alexa," and she goes, "You're welcome." And I'm like, how meaningful was that, right?
Very meaningful.
But it's still, I'm like, it's meaningful from the standpoint of my children are being very polite, but when you thank a person, that's a lot different than thanking Alexa. So Alexa's learning in a very digital space, but this feeling you get of appreciation from another human to another human is not something represented in the AI space. So that's the divide, right? I mean, you need humans. You're going to need humans to evolve and to provide business processes, and it's not going to go away. So I'm comfortable in saying that. Now, do we have to learn new things? Yes. People have to be smart and re-educated.
So it gets back to being really the empathetic leader, right? And being open, realizing everyone's an individual, and you got to meet them at their wavelength. Ken?
Yeah, I think I'll try to answer that question, Tom and Hunter, with this a learning tool. It's a mnemonic. It's called LISTEN, L-I-S-T-E-N, right? So listen. We all talk about listening. We talk about authentic listening and making sure that we pay attention as we're hearing. And I think someone said, someone earlier said, hear, the word hear. I thought I circled that word. But listen, let's spell that out. So listen is learn, as you just talked about. Take the time to learn what your talent is doing, and what they can do. People, we should know this, gravitate to what they know. So change what they know. Take them with you. Take them on a tour. Do your gimbal walk with them. Do the walk around the organization so they know more than what they came in to do. They know more about art. They know more about than just being a coder or a developer. Okay, so the idea of shaping and, well, that's the S. So learn, interpret, shape is what the LIS is. So interpret what they have and what they bring to the table. Years ago, we would hire a coder. Years ago, we would say, okay, this is what we need. But now we have different kinds of skills. So interpret what they have, shape what they have, transform what they have. That's the T. I know I'm running out of time here. And then the rest of it. So listen, interpret, shape, transform, evolve. Okay, and the N is nurture, but I'll give you an extra N because of what Tom said earlier. Nurture next. Make sure you take that time to nurture next.
Nice. Love it. Great job, Jesse. Great job. Thank you so much, Alan. Ken, awesome job. Big round of applause.